I'm Bernina expert Amanda Murphy, and this is How I Quilt It, a series in which Bernina and I show you how to quilt popular blocks. In episode 2, we'll review different options for quilting a courthouse steps block. You'll find the first two options on Bernina's blog, weallsew.com, and the third and fourth option in this video on my YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll be quilting these blocks on a Bernina Q series on a frame, but you can follow along and quilt on a domestic machine or a sit-down long arm as well. So let's start with the third block. We'll begin by quilting along the ditch around the squares that form this block, just like we did on the other two blocks I showed you on Bernina's blog, We All Sew. And I'm using my Jubilee straight line template here. It has those little hooks that help you align the seam with where you want to quilt. And you can also use the Every Angle template or my new Every Angle Plus template, which is in essence kind of Jubilee straight lines with the hooks combined with my Every Angle. Next, we'll mark the diagonals in the corners of the block. These are our mitering lines, and it helps us know where to stop and rotate the ruler. You can see that I quilted straight lines in the outer channel of the block adjacent to this one. So here, I'm going to quilt straight lines in the inner channel. So I start on one of those mitered lines, and I begin to quilt a line that is a 1/2 inch away from my seam. I've obviously sped up this video, but you'll note that I'm making sure that the lines on my quilting template lie over the seam. So it really doesn't matter whether I'm holding the template in front or in back of the foot in this case, as long as I have a line that I can use as a reference point. So on this second square, when I'm holding the template in front, I'm using the second line on the template as a reference point. It just depends on how I'm holding the template. What's nice is in this case of straight lines, you really have a lot of options. When you're quilting a curve, sometimes you have to hold the template in an awkward position to get the curve you want. Little stitches to lock my threads, bring my bobbin thread to the top and end my threads. Next, let's do a petal design. So I'm using my new Every Semicircle template here, and I'm quilting from one corner to the center and then out to another corner. So I'll start with little stitches, and I could also use my circle template. So this is a 4-inch square. I could use a 4-inch circle, and I'm using my measuring gauge to make sure that the edge of my template is a 1/4 inch away from that center point that I want to hit. Now I'm making sure, again with the measuring gauge, that the corner is a 1/4 inch away from the edge of that template. And then I rotate the template, and here on the frame you can see it's a little awkward to hold at this angle, but I don't have to go far. So I quilt to the center point and I stop. It's important to stop because you might need to adjust your template if it slipped. Same thing with the semicircle template. I'm checking that 1/4 inch with my measuring gauge, and I quilt to the center, and then I stop, check my point again, and quilt to the other side. One of the advantages of all my semicircle templates is that you don't have to end your thread to get inside the inner curve of the circle. And another advantage is that if you have all 3 sets, it gives you circles in diameter from 1.5 inches all the way to 17 inches. This is the middle set, set 2, that's shown here. We've finished the middle motif. Let's move on to the outer edge of this block. So I chose to quilt this like I would a border to show you just some border tips and tricks. So here I am marking the center of each of the sides, the center of the border, if you will. And then I'm going to start in the corner and work toward that center using a clamshell motif using the 3-inch semicircle template. Now this template's in set 1, and I'm going to bring the foot down, of course, before I bring the template over. And now I'm going to quilt from one little nook to the other, and I'm going to make sure that I don't go into that inner border area, that the template doesn't slip. And you'll notice that I stop midway, and that's so I can keep a secure grip on the template. Oftentimes with larger templates, if you quilted all the way around the template without moving your hands on a frame, you'd be off the table that supports it. You don't want that. Now I've done one side of the border and I've crossed the middle here. So now I'm going to go to the other side of the border. And what I want to have happen, I want the compensating aspect of this design to happen in the middle of the border. That's why I drew that midline first. So the border should be symmetrical on both sides of the midline. It doesn't have to fit perfectly, but if the compensation's in the middle, like it is here, it looks deliberate, and that's important. That needs to be in the middle. Your eye kind of wants to see that pattern, and so it's important you mark that midline before you begin. I decided here to do another pass of semicircles offset from the first, right? So I did it for one side right here, and now I'm going to go down and do the other side. So why did I do this? Well, I did pretty dense quilting elsewhere on this piece, and I always like to kind of balance my quilting, so I have about the same amount of quilting everywhere. And so I decided I needed to add a little more quilting to this area. Okay, so one side of this square is done. Let's do the next side. So once again, I've marked my center line. I start from the corner and I do 2 clamshells. And that second clamshell is going to pass over the center line. Not to worry, because we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side of what I'm calling my border here. So I have 2 clamshells. Now, I'm going to just go ahead while I'm over here and do the second pass of that clamshell. And one thing you'll note on my templates is when you're doing an offset pass, the white lines on the template line up over your previous stitching. So usually for most of my templates, the dark lines go over the motif that I just quilted, and the white lines go over the offset motifs. It's very helpful when you're doing a second pass of a design. So here we'll do those 2 clamshells, and we'll let that second clamshell pass over the first. Now, if you're on a domestic machine, you need both hands on the template and both hands on the sandwich, right? Because you move them as one. I'm on a frame here, which is why I just have one hand on the template. So I'm doing the offset motif, and now this border is done, and everything looks nice and neat because the compensation is happening at the center. So both sides of the border are exactly the same. So once again, we're going to do the third border. We're starting in the corner. So 1 clamshell, and I'm actually starting at a point 1/4 inch in from the raw edge of the fabric. That is so that seam area gets covered by the binding later and everything looks symmetrical and neat. Okay, so I have my 2 clamshells. I'm going to do the offset clamshell. And you can't see it really well here, but the white lines will line up over the previous stitching lines. And we did one side. Now let's go over and do the other side. Keep going to the corner. Now there I was able to do it without repositioning my hands. That's just because the way the ruler was angled. I can't always do that. Oftentimes I stop when I'm halfway across the shape. And you can't see this here, but I'm very subtly manipulating the pressure in my fingertips. I always want the main pressure to be closer to the needle and the foot. I don't want it to be far away on the ruler base, because if it was far away, potentially that template could tip right into the needle bar, and you don't want that. So I'm making sure that I'm holding it securely so it doesn't teeter-totter. It's one side, but I still have to do that offset motif. So I'll travel back. I'm not even going to the every angle or jubilee template for that. I just use the edge of these semicircles as a shortcut. I am so excited to see what you guys do with these semicircles. You can order them at your local Bernina dealer or on my website. So I hope you enjoy them. I really do. There's so many new products that I'm excited about this year. Okay, I'm almost done, right? And you notice I did stop halfway around because I'm kind of holding my template at a weird angle, and I feel like I need to stop to be secure. Now I need that offset motif that's going to happen right there. I can't believe I'm almost done. As I said, this video is sped up a little bit in this area. I sped up the straight stitching a lot because I think it's boring to watch, but I did speed this up a little bit too. Okay, little stitches to lock my threads. That's design 3. So are you guys ready for design 4? I hope so. And if you're enjoying this video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. So this is design 4. So I'm going to do my stitching the ditch. You guys know the drill for this. Again, every angle plus is a new template that has the same hooks as these Jubilee templates that I'm showing. Now I'm marking those miter lines, and I'm going to quilt free motion in here, but those miter lines help me know where to end. So I'm going to do a simple pattern of loops. We're all familiar with loops because of cursive, and I'm going to try to keep them pretty upright and not let them slant like they would if I was writing. Now I'm about to come to a corner. Whatever I quilt on the left side of this corner, I will try to mirror image when I quilt the right. So I have my loop, and then I try to catch a loop in the same place so I have that mirror image. It doesn't have to be perfect. Your eye will help correct things. One of the biggest challenges when you're learning to free motion quilt is to keep your shoulders relaxed. So I try to stick with bigger movements that start from my upper arms instead of quilting in my wrist. That's when your shoulders will hunch, whether you're at a frame or a sit down. It's very important. The other thing I'm looking at here is the edge of my foot. I'm making sure that the edge of my foot does not cross over the binding seams. Therefore, my needle stays well clear of them too. Little stitches, and it's time to end. Let's quilt the center. So you'll notice I kind of fussy cut the fabric when I pieced this pillow top. And because of that, the center of the fabric design is in the center of the block. So I decided to quilt a circle on each diagonal emanating from the center of that block. So I've drawn my diagonals. Now I'm going to start in the center of the block, and I'm going to quilt a circle. And here I'm showing you my every semicircle set. You could also use my every circle set for something like this. So I'm hooking on the template. I'm quilting a 2-inch circle. And I have the lines on the template on the diagonal that I drew. I quilt the first half of the circle. Then, using those same lines on the template for alignment, I quilt the second half of the circle. When I was playing with the prototypes of these templates, I was so excited to think about what you guys might potentially create. There's so many lines, they are so useful. Now this is a relatively small semicircle, so you'll notice that I'm not really stopping halfway across the curve like I would if I had a larger template from one of these sets. Coming back into the center. I only have one to go and I'll be all done. One side and then the other, and then I end with little stitches. I'm in BSR2 on a Q series, so I change the stitch count when I'm about 3/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch away from my intended ending point. Bring up the bobbin thread, clip my threads, and I finish the 4th block. For more quilting tips and tricks, subscribe to this YouTube channel, and you can find me on Facebook in my group, Quilting with Amanda Murphy. If you missed the first 2 designs for the courthouse step blocks, check out Bernina's blog. We also, and Bernina and I, will be back next time with How I Quilt It.